It began with a single email. A message so short, so sterile, yet so devastating that even Meghan Markle, a woman who had faced tabloids, royal feuds, and public humiliation, sat frozen in disbelief. The email wasn't from a gossip columnist. It wasn't from a disgruntled former staffer or a royal aide looking to spill secrets. No, this one came from Hollywood itself, from the place that once built her dream and now, it seemed, was preparing to bury it. Thank you for your interest, but the production team has decided to move in a different direction. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. 7 cold, emotionless words. But behind them was a decision that would echo through every corner of her carefully constructed image, a quiet yet brutal exile from the very industry she'd spent her life chasing. The world didn't hear it happen. There were no flashing cameras or red carpet meltdowns. Just silence. The kind that follows when the doors finally close, and there's no one left to charm. For Meghan Markle, the actress turned duchess turned mogul, Hollywood was supposed to be the comeback story, the glorious third act that redeemed the chaos of her royal downfall. She wasn't just returning to screens. She was reclaiming the narrative, a global icon rewriting her own ending. Or so she thought. But what if that dream came crashing down not because of bad luck or timing or the cruel spin of tabloids, but because one man, a respected Hollywood director named Jason Orley, had seen behind the performance? What if he decided, after witnessing her up close, that she wasn't ready to act anymore, not because she lacked skill, but because she couldn't separate herself from the role she'd been playing all along? That's the story Hollywood insiders whispered about for months. The day Meghan Markle was quietly blacklisted from close personal friends, a film that could have reignited her career, and the moment her acting dream was trampled by her own ambition. Now, before you roll your eyes and say, another Meghan scandal, pause for a second. Because this isn't just another gossip piece. This is the unraveling of a carefully curated illusion. It's about power, pride, and the haunting question that follows every star who burns too bright. What happens when the spotlight refuses to follow? Let's rewind. When Meghan left the royal family in 2020, she spoke like someone liberated, free from protocol, press, and palace politics. In interviews, she hinted that Hollywood had always been her real home, that she missed the creativity, the connection, the art. She wanted to produce meaningful stories, act again, and use her platform to inspire. It sounded noble. But behind the PR slogans and soft focus lighting, there was something else, an urgency. Because the truth is, Meghan wasn't just looking to act. She was looking to prove she could still command an audience, to prove that she wasn't just famous because of who she married, but because of who she was. So when word got out that Amazon MGM Studios was developing a new film titled Close Personal Friends, Meghan's name surfaced instantly. The project was perfect. An introspective drama about friendship, betrayal, and the cost of fame. A story eerily close to her own. And the director attached? Jason Orley, known for his sharp direction and emotional precision. His past work had launched careers. For Meghan, this was it. The golden ticket. Behind the scenes, her team moved fast. Calls were made. Scripts requested. Meetings arranged. Insiders say Meghan's agent positioned her as eager, humble, and ready to work. She told friends it felt like destiny. The industry was finally giving her a second chance. But what she didn't know was that Hollywood's memory is long, and its tolerance for drama is short. From the moment she walked into the studio for her first reading, something felt off. The smiles were polite, but distant. The assistants avoided eye contact. And when Jason Orley walked into the room, the temperature seemed to shift. He wasn't hostile, just unreadable. The kind of director who could see through layers of charm in seconds. Meghan began her lines with confidence. She hit her marks. She projected. She emoted. But as the scene went on, something in Orley's face changed. Not anger, not frustration, just quiet disappointment. Later, an insider described it perfectly. She wasn't acting. She was performing Meghan Markle playing a role. And that, they say, was the moment Jason Orley made his decision. Now, you might wonder, could a single audition really destroy someone's career? Normally, no. But Meghan wasn't just anyone. She came with a history, a media circus, and a reputation for being difficult. Hollywood loves a redemption arc, but it despises unpredictability. The director didn't just see an actress. He saw a liability. Over the next few weeks, whispers began to circulate across Amazon MGM's internal channels. Notes from producers described her as too self-conscious, unable to take direction, and hyper-aware of her image. It wasn't malicious. It was clinical, professional, and damning. Then, someone reportedly added 2 words that ended everything. Not recommended. And that's when Jason Orley stepped in personally. He reportedly told studio executives that Meghan lacked authenticity, that every emotion felt rehearsed. In Hollywood terms, that's a death sentence. Within days, her name disappeared from call sheets, and her agent stopped taking her calls. But this story isn't about one rejection. It's about how that single moment exposed everything Meghan had been hiding. Her Hollywood dream wasn't built on art. It was built on image, control, and illusion. And when Jason Orley refused to play along, the entire facade cracked. Now, imagine her reaction. The woman who stood beside princes and presidents, who preached about resilience and reinvention, suddenly finding herself locked out of the one world she thought she could always return to. Sources close to her described the mood in her Montecito home as dark. The calls grew fewer. The paparazzi shots looked staged. The silence from Amazon MGM was deafening. But what really happened behind closed doors at close personal friends? What did Jason Orley see that made him blacklist one of the world's most famous women from acting altogether? Some say it was her attitude. Others insist it was her behavior toward the crew. One insider whispered that Meghan tried to rewrite parts of her character to better reflect her personal journey, a move that frustrated the writing team. Another claimed she clashed with production staff, believing her royal status gave her creative authority. Whatever it was, something snapped. Jason Orley, known for his quiet professionalism, made a decision few in Hollywood dared to make: to stand by integrity over influence. He didn't release a statement. He didn't seek attention. He simply removed her name, and the industry understood what that meant. For Meghan, that silence was louder than any headline. She'd been through public controversies before: Oprah interviews, royal tell-alls, lawsuits. But this was different. This was personal. Hollywood had spoken, and this time, there would be no comeback tour. In the days that followed, her PR team scrambled. They floated rumors of new Netflix deals, lifestyle launches, even a podcast revival. Anything to distract from what insiders already knew: that the Duchess of Sussex had been quietly blacklisted from one of the biggest production networks in modern Hollywood. And the worst part? She never saw it coming. This wasn't the dramatic takedown she was used to. There were no tabloids screaming betrayal, no royal officials leaking statements. Just an industry that decided, in silence, that it was done. That's the haunting truth behind Meghan Markle's Hollywood despair. Because the most powerful thing in show business isn't applause or fame, it's being forgotten. And as her phone stopped ringing, as studio doors stayed closed, and as the close Personal Friends trailer dropped without her name attached, Meghan finally faced the one role she couldn't control, the one where the spotlight no longer belonged to her. But the story doesn't end there. Because what came next would expose a chain of events that stretched far beyond one film. Secret memos, leaked footage, behind-the-scenes arguments, and a campaign of quiet revenge that nearly brought down a director's reputation. And in the middle of it all stood Meghan Markle, fighting not just for a part, but for her identity. Because when Hollywood turns its back, you either fade or you fight. And Meghan was never one to fade quietly. But what she did next, that would shock even her most loyal supporters, and it would make Jason Orley's blacklist look merciful by comparison. Because sometimes, when the dream dies, the performance begins again, this time for survival. What came next would change everything. And no one saw it coming. It all began with a smile. The kind of smile that could convince even her harshest critics that she was winning again. The Montecito mansion gleamed in the California sun, and Meghan Markle stood before her mirror rehearsing lines. Not for a film, but for an interview. The words had to sound natural, effortless, self-assured. The world needed to believe she was in control again. After everything that's happened, she said softly to her reflection, "I'm just focusing on what I love, storytelling." That word, storytelling, had become her shield, her magic phrase, her brand. It covered every wound and deflected every rumor. When people questioned her authenticity, she spoke of stories. When deals fell through, she spoke of creativity. And when the world began to move on, she said she was building something bigger. But underneath that polished composure, there was panic. Because in Hollywood, out of sight means out of existence. By early 2024, Meghan knew the whispers were true. Her star was fading. The Spotify deal had vanished, the Netflix project stalled, and the Archetypes podcast became a memory no one revisited. The tabloids called it a royal cooling. Her team called it a rebrand. Meghan called it destiny delayed. So when the opportunity for close personal friends came along, it felt like divine intervention. This wasn't just another acting role, it was poetic symmetry. A story about fame, betrayal, and reinvention. It was her story, but on her terms. She called it a second sunrise. Her PR strategists began mapping out the comeback campaign. Exclusive interviews were lined up, Instagram engagement plans drafted, and a glossy Vanity Fair feature was pitched. The cover headline would read, Meghan Markle, Hollywood's Duchess returns. It sounded perfect. It sounded cinematic. But reality, as always, was messier. Because behind every red carpet, there's a waiting list of people who remember how you treated them. Meghan's old crew from Suits remembered the long silences after she married into royalty. Publicists recalled the arrogance, the demands, the last-minute cancellations. To them, Meghan wasn't a struggling artist returning home. She was a brand trying to reclaim oxygen. Still, she believed in the illusion. She believed that with enough charm, enough control, enough narrative polishing, Hollywood would forgive. After all, hadn't it forgiven worse? She spent hours in front of her mirror practicing expressions, gentle confidence, warmth, intelligence. No defensiveness, her image coach reminded her. You're not explaining, you're inspiring. And for a while, it worked. Paparazzi photos of her walking in Beverly Hills, by coincidence, appeared on entertainment blogs. Rumors swirled that she was secretly in talks with top directors. Red carpet stylists began whispering that she was planning her return. Every illusion was meticulously placed. Every leak, deliberate. But illusion only works when people want to believe it. And this time, Hollywood didn't. Because behind the curtain, executives at Amazon MGM Studios had begun whispering something else, something Meghan didn't know yet. Jason Orley wasn't impressed. At first, Meghan didn't even know who he was. Her assistant had to Google him. He's the one who did I Want You Back, the assistant said, scrolling through IMDb. Critics loved it. He's known for being authentic. Authentic, the word that haunted her. During her first Zoom meeting with Orley, she tried to charm him. She smiled, laughed at his jokes, mentioned shared acquaintances, even referenced her charity work. But Orley didn't flinch. He spoke little, listened more. His notes were surgical, his tone unflinching. We're not looking for star power, he said quietly. We're looking for truth. That line hit her harder than she let on. Because truth was the one currency she no longer had full control over. Later that night, Meghan told Harry, he doesn't get it. He thinks I'm some celebrity trying to act. He doesn't see that I am an actor. Harry said little. He'd heard this tone before. The defensiveness, the urgency to prove something invisible. He just nodded and said, then show him. And Meghan planned to. The next week, she prepared obsessively for her in-person read-through. She hired a private acting coach, someone discreet, someone who would sign an NDA. She requested the script in advance and rewrote several of her lines privately, just in case they didn't fit her energy. Her goal wasn't to impress, it was to dominate. She arrived on set that morning in tailored neutrals, hair perfectly blown out, posture flawless. The crew noticed. Everyone always noticed. Meghan made sure of it. But the moment the reading began, something broke. Her delivery was polished, but empty. Every gesture seemed rehearsed. Her eyes, perfectly aligned with the camera, held no vulnerability. It was all precision, no pulse. Jason Orley watched quietly. He said nothing as she finished. The silence stretched uncomfortably long. Finally, he looked down at his notes and murmured, "Thank you." That was it. No praise, no warmth. Just those two words. For Meghan, that silence was unbearable. She'd built her career on reactions, applause, admiration, envy. Silence was death. She smiled tightly, excused herself, and left early, claiming she had a prior engagement. But insiders later revealed she went straight to her car, slammed the door, and screamed. because deep down, she already knew. The illusion had cracked. In the following days, she tried to salvage what she could. Her team sent follow-up emails to the studio, emphasizing her deep emotional connection to the script. Her agent called Orley's assistant, hinting that Meghan's involvement would elevate the project's visibility. But Orley didn't budge. Behind closed doors, he told colleagues, "She's not an actress anymore. She's a performance." Those words would haunt her, because Meghan's entire identity depended on performance. The royal interviews, the charity galas, the podcast monologues about empathy. Every moment was curated, sculpted, perfected. She'd convinced herself it was art. But Orley saw through it instantly. Hollywood thrives on illusion, but it worships authenticity. And Orley's quiet rejection exposed her biggest fear, that she had forgotten how to be real. Back in Montecito, the atmosphere shifted. Friends noticed her sudden silence at dinner parties. PR reps whispered that she'd become moody, unreachable. Her team grew nervous. The comeback wasn't landing. But Meghan refused to accept defeat. She believed the rejection was political, personal, maybe even jealous. "They're threatened by me," she reportedly told a confidant. "They don't know how to handle a woman who controls her own narrative." In her mind, Jason Orley wasn't a director. He was another gatekeeper, another man trying to silence her story, and that belief fueled her next move. She called her publicist and said, "Let's make them regret this." Over the next week, headlines began appearing mysteriously. Meghan Markle courted by multiple Hollywood studios. Meghan in talks for new film about friendship. MGM eyeing Duchess for upcoming project. Each article traced back to anonymous industry insiders. Each line crafted to maintain the illusion that she was in demand. It worked for a moment. Social media lit up. Fans speculated. Producers called for meetings, mostly out of curiosity. But in private, Hollywood execs were already exchanging quiet warnings. Jason Orley had spoken. The blacklist had begun, though she didn't know it yet. But what's truly tragic about this part of her story isn't the rejection. It's that Meghan still believed she could spin it. She thought she could control perception like she always had. But Hollywood is a different beast than Buckingham Palace. In the palace, narratives can be managed. In Hollywood, reputations can evaporate overnight. And as she sat in her sunlit office drafting her next rebranding memo, Meghan didn't realize that the illusion she was building wasn't saving her career, it was burying it. Because illusions work only as long as no one sees the strings. And Jason Orley had already pulled one. But Meghan wasn't done. Not yet. Because the moment she realized Hollywood was slipping away, she did what she always did best. She fought back with performance, charm, and strategy. What she didn't know was that Jason Orley was about to expose something that no amount of PR could erase. Something recorded. Something undeniable. Something that would turn the illusion into her undoing. And what came next would change everything. No, it was supposed to be the perfect fit. The role that would finally bridge Meghan Markle's fractured identity. Part Hollywood star, part humanitarian, part misunderstood duchess. The film was called Close Personal Friends, a subtle, intimate character study about loyalty, deception, and the hidden costs of ambition. In other words, it could have been written about her. The story followed 3 women in Los Angeles navigating a tangled web of personal and professional betrayal. Meghan's would-be character, Ava Sinclair, was a former actress turned social advocate, a woman trying to rebuild her image after public scandal. Sound familiar? Insiders joked that Meghan didn't need to act. She just needed to show up. But to Jason Orley, the film's director, that was exactly the problem. The project had been in the works for months before Meghan's team caught wind of it. Jason Orley, fresh off a string of critical successes, wanted something raw and grounded. He wasn't chasing celebrity names. He was searching for truth. He'd spent years observing the shallow side of Hollywood, the empty smiles and self-serving compassion, and Close Personal Friends was his way of confronting it. He wanted actors who could bleed authenticity, not personalities performing sincerity. When Meghan's agent called to pitch her for the role, Orley hesitated. He didn't reject her outright, but he didn't say yes either. His response was cautious. Let's see if she can disappear into the character. Disappear. That was the word. The one thing Meghan couldn't do anymore. Because how do you disappear when your entire identity is built on being seen? Her team assured her it would be an easy fit. Jason's smart, but he's fair, her PR manager said. You show up prepared, professional, and charming. He'll love you. Meghan smiled at that. Professional and charming were her trademarks. She'd built a career out of looking effortless. But what no one told her was that Jason Orley didn't care about charm. He cared about silence, about what an actor could say without words. On the first day of rehearsals, Meghan arrived early, flanked by her assistant and a discreet stylist who just happened to be there to ensure her outfit looked casual but camera-ready. She wore soft beige tones, her signature neutral palette, and carried a stainless steel water bottle with her initials engraved in gold. Every detail was controlled, every moment curated. Crew members greeted her politely but cautiously. Hollywood has long memories, and while some whispered admiration, others shared glances that said, "Let's see how long this lasts." Jason Orley arrived 15 minutes later, coffee in hand, plain clothes, no entourage. He gave her a brief nod. "Glad you could make it." His tone was calm but detached, not dismissive, just professional. Meghan's smile froze for a split second before she recovered. They began with a table read. No cameras, no makeup, no lights. Just raw dialogue. The other cast members slipped effortlessly into their roles. Their voices trembled, cracked, lived. But when Meghan's turn came, something felt staged. She hit her marks, enunciated perfectly, projected emotion. Yet there was a hollowness to it, like watching a commercial for authenticity. Orley's brow furrowed. He said nothing, just scribbled notes. After the read-through, Meghan approached him. "Would you like feedback from me on the character?" she asked, confident, almost rehearsed. "I just feel she should have more." Orley raised a hand gently. "Let's just sit with what's on the page for now." For Meghan, that was an insult disguised as instruction. She'd spent years being told her instincts were right, by royal advisors, PR managers, stylists, and fans. Now, here was a man who didn't just question her, but dismissed her contribution entirely. She smiled through gritted teeth. "Of course, I'm adaptable." But inside, the irritation burned. Later that evening, one of the assistant directors overheard Meghan venting to her team. "He doesn't understand my energy. He's trying to box me in. This role should evolve, it should reflect me." That phrase, "reflect me," became the first red flag. Because for Jason Orley, the story wasn't about Meghan Markle. It was about the truth of flawed, unpolished humanity. And the more Meghan tried to inject herself into the role, the less real it became. Over the next few days, the tension quietly grew. During rehearsals, Orley pushed for stillness, long pauses, subtle expressions, emotional restraint. But Meghan couldn't resist filling the silence. She improvised lines, adjusted tone, even altered dialogue mid-scene. She wanted to feel in control. At one point, Orley stopped her mid-take. "Don't act it," he said evenly. "Just be." Meghan blinked. "I am being," she replied. He sighed. "You're performing being. There's a difference." The room went silent. Even the sound operator stopped adjusting levels. That one moment, that quiet correction, would be whispered about for weeks after. Because everyone in that room saw it. The look on Meghan's face, the flash of humiliation, the realization that her old tricks weren't working. For the rest of the session, her delivery tightened. The warmth vanished. What remained was effort, too much of it. When the day wrapped, Orley thanked everyone and left without small talk. Meghan lingered, pretending to check her phone, waiting for some acknowledgement. But he didn't look back. That night, in the privacy of her car, she sent a text to her assistant. "I don't think he respects me." The assistant didn't reply immediately. Maybe she didn't know how to. Meanwhile, inside the MGM production office, quiet discussions began. Notes from the creative team described image management concerns. One executive reportedly asked, "Can she handle direction?" The response came back short. "She resists it." But even then, Orley didn't want to pull the plug. He wanted to give her one more chance, an on-camera screen test. That would decide everything. The screen test took place 3 days later, and this time, the full crew was present. Lights, cameras, hair, makeup, everything designed to simulate the real set. Meghan arrived immaculate, wearing subtle tones, her posture perfect, her aura radiating confidence. The scene was emotionally charged. Ava Sinclair confronting a friend who betrayed her. It should have been electric. It should have been Meghan's redemption. But as the cameras rolled, it became painfully clear. She was hitting marks, not emotions. Every tear looked timed. Every pause felt calculated. It wasn't vulnerability, it was choreography. After the take, silence. Jason Orley didn't clap. He didn't even nod. He looked to his cinematographer and muttered, "Cut." The assistant director whispered, "We got it." Orley shook his head. "We got something." When Meghan walked off the set, her smile didn't reach her eyes. She knew it hadn't landed. She could feel the air shifting. She excused herself, saying she had a charity call, but everyone knew she was heading straight to her car. Inside, she stared at her reflection in the rearview mirror. "It's fine," she whispered. "It's all politics. They'll see." But Orley had already seen enough. That evening, he wrote his official casting evaluation, a short, surgical report that ended with one sentence: "She's not the right fit for this project or future collaborations." Those words, though never intended for public release, circulated quietly through MGM's inner circles. A whisper here, a forward there, until everyone in the studio knew Jason Orley had effectively blacklisted Meghan Markle. For Meghan, the news arrived indirectly. Her agent called one afternoon, voice careful, tone rehearsed. "They're going another way," he said. "Who'd they choose?" she asked sharply. "They haven't announced yet." Her chest tightened. "It's because of him, isn't it?" There was silence on the other end. That silence told her everything. Later, she told her team, "He's trying to make an example of me. He doesn't want me to succeed because it would prove I can rise above the noise." But Jason Orley didn't need to make an example of anyone. His reputation alone carried weight. He wasn't petty, and he wasn't cruel. But he was precise, and in an industry built on perception, his precision was lethal. By the end of that week, Meghan's phone stopped ringing. A few production assistants who once called her Duchess now referred to her as the liability. Still, she refused to give up. She instructed her PR team to spin it. Stories were leaked suggesting scheduling conflicts, creative differences, even personal reasons for withdrawing. Anything but rejection. But inside Hollywood's echo chambers, everyone already knew the truth. Meghan hadn't left the project had left her. And while she scrambled to rewrite the narrative, Jason Orley quietly moved on. He finished casting, began filming, and refused to speak publicly about her. That silence, more than any statement, sealed her fate. Because in Hollywood, a public feud fades. But silence becomes legend. And that legend began to follow her everywhere. Through studios, through agents, through every whispered meeting that ended with the same phrase: "Let's not complicate the project." For Meghan Markle, the Duchess who once believed she could conquer both kingdoms, royalty and Hollywood, the message was becoming painfully clear. One kingdom had exiled her with tradition, the other with truth. But if Jason Orley thought that would be the end of it, he underestimated her. Because Meghan wasn't about to accept defeat quietly. She was about to fight back, not on set, not in private, but through the weapon she wielded best, her image. And the first shot in that battle would be fired not in a studio, but in the press. Because when Meghan couldn't win the role, she decided to control the story. But what came next would spiral far beyond her control, and it would expose a side of her that even Hollywood had never seen before. No one saw it coming that there's a moment in every actor's life that defines them. Not the awards, not the applause, but the silence that follows a rejection you can't talk your way out of. For Meghan Markle, that silence came wrapped in polite professionalism, sealed in an email, and delivered without ceremony. Jason Orley's verdict wasn't loud, but it was final. Not recommended for this or future MGM productions. That one line would follow her like a shadow. Jason Orley wasn't known for drama. He wasn't the type to throw tantrums or fire off angry memos. His reputation in Hollywood was that of calm precision, a man who could articulate emotion without raising his voice. But when it came to Meghan, something about her energy didn't sit right with him. He couldn't explain it at first. It wasn't her talent, exactly. She had presence, that undeniable magnetism that made people watch. But beneath that, he saw calculation, a performer playing the idea of vulnerability, not the truth of it. "She's performing sincerity," he told a trusted colleague after the screen test. "It's impressive, but it's not real. And audiences can always tell." That comment, meant to stay private, leaked within days. And once it did, it spread through casting circles like wildfire. At first, no one believed it. Meghan Markle, the Duchess of global intrigue, blacklisted by a mid-tier director? Impossible. But as emails began to circulate through Amazon MGM's inner network, the whispers grew louder. Someone had documented their interactions, meeting summaries, internal notes, production feedback. The language was clinical, but the message was unmistakable. Meghan had been flagged. In the entertainment industry, that word, flagged, is the quiet equivalent of exile. It starts small. A casting director hesitates. An assistant forgets to forward your headshot. A producer says she's too high maintenance. Within weeks, your name transforms from opportunity to risk. And Meghan Markle was about to feel that transformation in real time. But before the blacklist, there was the meeting. It took place in a glass-walled conference room on the MGM lot. Jason Orley sat across from two studio executives, a casting head, and a PR liaison. Meghan wasn't present. She'd already been informed that the role would not be moving forward. Still, the studio wanted to make the final decision official and documented. She has an audience, one executive began. That kind of visibility could benefit us. Orley didn't flinch. Visibility isn't the same as credibility. The room went quiet. He continued, his voice steady. She doesn't listen to direction. Every scene becomes about her, not the character. She's protecting her image, not serving the story. The PR liaison interjected softly. That's part of her brand. Audiences expect that. Orley shook his head. Then she's not the right fit for what we're making. This film isn't about performance, it's about truth. And I can't build truth around someone who's always performing. Those words sealed her fate. Later that afternoon, he sent an internal note to MGM's senior creative team. It was short, unemotional, and devastatingly precise. Meghan Markle is talented but fundamentally misaligned with this production's creative direction. I recommend not pursuing future collaborations. In Hollywood, that kind of language is code. It doesn't sound like a blacklist, but it is one. It means, don't call her. Don't cast her. Don't attach her name to your project. By the end of that week, other producers quietly removed her from consideration for upcoming scripts. Her agent, once effusive and confident, started dodging her calls. And that's when the panic set in. Meghan had been rejected before, by roles, by institutions, by the royal family itself. But this felt different. This was Hollywood. This was supposed to be her kingdom, her redemption, her homecoming. She couldn't be exiled again. Not here. Not after everything. She called her PR strategist late that night. We need to fix this, she said. Her voice was calm, but beneath the surface, it trembled. The strategist hesitated. It's complicated. Jason's note wasn't personal. It's creative feedback. Then we control the narrative, Meghan interrupted. We leak something first. Creative differences, scheduling conflict, whatever makes sense. But we make sure it looks like my choice. That's how it always started. Control the story before the story controls you. The next morning, entertainment outlets began receiving anonymous tips. Meghan Markle steps away from close personal friends to focus on new philanthropic media projects. The articles painted her as proactive, visionary, busy. The word, rejection, never appeared once. But inside Hollywood's closed doors, people laughed. They knew. They always knew. Because at that very moment, Jason Orley's private memo was quietly circulating among producers at Amazon MGM and a few trusted contacts at Netflix and Paramount. In an industry built on silence, information like that travels quietly but fast. Meanwhile, Meghan's inner circle began to fracture. Her agent grew defensive. You're making people nervous, he told her. You need to lay low for a while. She bristled. I don't lay low. I move forward. But moving forward was no longer an option. Because Hollywood was closing ranks. One casting director confided to a colleague. It's not that she's untalented. It's that she's radioactive. Nobody wants the drama that comes with her name. That word, radioactive, spread faster than any PR statement could contain it. At first, Meghan dismissed it all as gossip. They said the same thing when I married Harry, she told a friend. They underestimate me. They always do. But even she couldn't ignore what happened next. A major streaming service, one that had once courted her for a limited series deal, suddenly paused discussions. Another studio executive who'd once invited her to charity galas now avoided her entirely. Her emails went unanswered. Her calls, redirected. And Jason Orley? He said nothing. He didn't gloat, didn't respond to media inquiries, didn't leak anything himself. He didn't have to. His silence was enough. In Hollywood, reputation speaks louder than statements, and his was impeccable. But behind his professionalism, those close to him said he felt conflicted. He wasn't out to destroy her, one friend revealed. He just couldn't work with her. He said she was addicted to control, that every emotion had a mirror behind it. That observation hit deeper than anyone realized. Because Meghan's control wasn't just a habit. It was her armor. It was what had kept her standing through royal scandals, lawsuits, and public ridicule. Losing that control, especially to a man she barely knew, cut deeper than rejection. It was humiliation. In the weeks that followed, Meghan became consumed with Orley's name. She asked her staff for updates on the film. She followed production gossip. She even requested her PR team monitor online chatter for false narratives. Every article that praised Orley's integrity or courage felt like a personal attack. Then came the leaks, real or orchestrated. No one could tell anymore. Reports emerged claiming Meghan had been difficult on set, that she'd made unreasonable creative demands, and that Orley had been forced to intervene. Each leak chipped away at her credibility, and the more she tried to deny it, the worse it looked. Public sympathy was gone. The industry's patience evaporated. And as close personal friends continued production without her, Jason Orley's star only rose higher. Early test screenings drew rave reviews. Insiders called it a masterpiece of honesty. That word again, honesty. The one thing Meghan's critics claimed she'd lost. When the first trailer dropped, it trended instantly. But not because of its content, because of who wasn't in it. Fans noticed. Comment sections exploded. Wasn't Meghan Markle supposed to be in this? Didn't she announce this months ago? Her PR team scrambled. Let's say she was never officially cast, one advisor suggested. We can spin it as a rumor that got out of hand. But by then, no one cared what she said. The industry had already moved on. The most painful part wasn't the rejection, it was the indifference, the silence, the sense that her relevance had evaporated overnight. In private, she raged. They're trying to erase me, she said to a confidant. They think I'll just disappear. The confidant didn't answer. Because deep down, they knew. That's exactly what Hollywood was doing. Quietly, efficiently, permanently. For Jason Orley, it was just another day's work. For Meghan Markle, it was the end of something she hadn't even realized was fragile. But Meghan was never one to retreat without striking back. And if Hollywood had blacklisted her in whispers, she was about to respond in headlines. She would reclaim the narrative, not as the failed actress, but as the victim of a male-dominated system, silenced once again for daring to speak her truth. It was a strategy she'd used before, but this time, the stakes were higher. Because while she was preparing her next PR move, someone inside MGM was about to leak something far worse, something that would make her carefully crafted comeback implode completely. A private memo, a recorded exchange, and a single line that would send shockwaves through every entertainment outlet in America. But what came next would make Jason Orley's rejection look merciful. Because the next revelation wouldn't just end her acting career. It would expose everything she'd tried to hide about who she'd become. And no one, not even Meghan herself, was ready for that. Hollywood never issues official statements when it wants someone gone. It doesn't release press conferences or suspension notices or no longer affiliated tweets. It whispers. That's how power works here, quietly, efficiently, lethally. And Meghan Markle was about to learn that lesson the hard way. The morning after Jason Orley's casting memo leaked internally, phones started buzzing across Los Angeles. Producers, casting assistants, PR directors, all receiving the same message in slightly different words. Don't attach her. Not worth the headache. It wasn't a coordinated attack. It didn't have to be. In Hollywood, reputations die by rumor, not decree. At first, Meghan's team dismissed it as temporary backlash. They'll forget in a few weeks, her publicist said during a crisis meeting at her Montecito home. You're still Meghan Markle. People want to work with you. But Meghan could tell by the tone, the forced cheerfulness, the tight smile, that even her team didn't believe it. Within days, the offers stopped. Projects that had been in negotiation quietly disappeared. Calls to major streaming platforms went unanswered. And the same journalists who once begged for interviews suddenly had scheduling conflicts. This wasn't a storm she could outlast. This was exile, wrapped in silence. For an industry that pretends to celebrate reinvention, Hollywood has an unspoken rule. You only get one fall from grace. Maybe two, if you're lucky. Meghan had already had hers, the royal exit, the tell-all interviews, the controversy fatigue. By the time Jason Orley blacklisted her, the world had already labeled her difficult. He just confirmed what many already suspected. But how did it happen so fast? How does someone so famous, so recognizable, so endlessly discussed, become untouchable almost overnight? The answer lies in the network, the invisible ecosystem of assistants, coordinators, and executives who make up Hollywood's bloodstream. These aren't the people in front of cameras, but the ones behind them. The gatekeepers, the whisperers. They talk, constantly, over coffee, during fittings, on late-night calls. And when one of them says, "She's trouble," the others listen. That's how Meghan's name started to shift from intriguing to radioactive. A few days after the memo leaked, one producer at another major studio received an email from Meghan's agent pitching her for an independent drama. The producer replied curtly, "Appreciate the submission, but our schedule's full this quarter." It was a lie, of course. The schedule was wide open. But in Hollywood, schedule conflicts is code for don't even try. And that's all it took. Soon, assistants began sharing anecdotes. She made everyone uncomfortable. She tried to rewrite her lines. She refused to take direction. Most of these stories weren't verifiable, but that didn't matter. In the Whisper Network, perception is fact. By the end of the week, every casting director in Los Angeles had heard some version of the story. One said she was impossible to manage. Another called her a PR bomb waiting to go off. Someone even claimed, falsely, that Meghan had screamed at a camera operator during her audition. The truth didn't matter anymore. The narrative was set. And in Hollywood, once the Whisper Network brands you, there's no undoing it. Meanwhile, Meghan was spiraling. Her team tried everything. Phone calls, private meetings, favors from old contacts. But doors kept closing. One agent, who had once called her a brand in herself, quietly removed her name from their client roster. A stylist who had dressed her for premieres suddenly became unavailable. Even photographers who used to chase her down Rodeo Drive stopped showing up. In just a few weeks, Meghan Markle, once the woman who could summon headlines with a single walk to her car, had vanished from the Hollywood circuit. But silence never sat well with her. She needed to be seen, heard, acknowledged. So she did what she always did best. She went on the offensive. Her PR team began crafting a narrative. Meghan, the misunderstood woman silenced by a misogynistic industry. Articles appeared almost overnight. Anonymous sources claiming Orley had targeted her unfairly, that he'd been intimidated by her presence. One piece even suggested that certain male directors had conspired to keep women of influence out of leading roles. The framing was brilliant. It played perfectly to her established brand. The defiant feminist, the silenced truth-teller, the woman standing tall against powerful men. But there was one problem. Hollywood wasn't buying it. Because while the public might eat up a good victim narrative, the industry runs on receipts. And Jason Orley had them. Documentation of behavior, emails, performance reports. He didn't release them publicly, but word spread that he could have pushed. And that made Meghan's campaign dangerous. "She's picking the wrong fight," one executive reportedly told a colleague. "You don't go after Orley. He's respected. She'll make it worse." And worse it got. Behind closed doors, another kind of whisper began, not about Meghan's acting, but her character. Rumors of emotional volatility, ego clashes, unrealistic demands. Someone claimed she refused to use standard trailers because they didn't align with her energy. Another said she brought her own personal lighting technician to auditions. No one could prove any of it, but it didn't matter. In a business built on perception, these were death blows. What made it even more devastating was how fast people distanced themselves. Former colleagues, stylists, even friends started erasing traces of association. A director who had once publicly praised her deleted his old post. A podcast host quietly removed an episode featuring her. It was as if the entire industry had agreed, collectively, silently, that Meghan Markle no longer existed. Her world, once bursting with attention, had gone eerily quiet. And silence is the one thing Meghan can't stand. At home, She reportedly began planning her counterattack. "They can't blacklist me," she told a friend over lunch. "I'll just make my own platform." That idea would soon evolve into a new pitch. A self-produced docudrama series exploring female resilience in the entertainment industry. But at the time, it was just a line in a conversation, a coping mechanism. Because the reality was simple, she was losing control. For the first time since stepping into the public eye, Meghan Markle couldn't shape the narrative. No matter what she said, the Whisper Network had already spoken. It wasn't just that Jason Orley didn't want her. It was that Hollywood, quietly, unanimously, had decided she was too risky to touch. And that's the cruel irony of this industry. It loves rebels, but only if they're profitable. It forgives controversy, but never embarrassment. Meghan's problem wasn't that she failed. It was that she failed publicly, and people remembered. By now, even her closest advisors were advising retreat. "Let the story fade," they said. "Give it time." But Meghan never understood the value of silence. In her mind, silence was surrender, and surrender was never an option. So she doubled down. More leaks, more sympathy stories, more interviews framed as heartfelt reflections. But the harder she tried to control the fire, the faster it spread. Then came the final blow, a call from an old friend in the industry, one who spoke candidly because they still cared. "Meg," the voice said softly, "your name's on the list." "What list?" she asked. "The quiet one," they said. "The list of people studios won't touch. They don't announce it, but it's there. You've got a reputation now. Unpredictable, self-serving, risky. And in this town, that's worse than scandal." Meghan went silent. For a moment, the reality sank in. She wasn't just being talked about, she was being erased. But even then, she couldn't let go. "Then I'll tell my side," she whispered. And she would. But before she could even mount her full defense, Amazon MGM made their move, formally and permanently. Because Jason Orley hadn't just walked away from her. He had documentation, a report, and soon it would leak. Not to the tabloids, but to Hollywood itself. And once that file landed in the hands of insiders, there would be no denying what really happened behind those studio doors. No spin, no narrative, no illusion left to hide behind. Because the blacklist was no longer just whispers. It was official, and what came next would make those whispers roar. No one, not even Meghan, was ready for the sound that it started as a rumor, a small spark buried deep within the corridors of Amazon MGM Studios. A whispered phrase passed from assistant to producer, producer to executive. "There's a report." At first, no one outside the building knew what it meant. But soon, that whisper turned into a full-blown tremor, one that reached Meghan Markle's Montecito mansion faster than she could rehearse her next denial. The fallout wasn't public. Not yet. But inside the industry, it was already devastating. The report in question, Jason Orley's post-production memo, wasn't supposed to leave the studio. It wasn't a scandalous expose, not even an emotional rant. It was cold, measured, professional. And that's what made it lethal. Because in Hollywood, emotional critiques can be forgiven. Professional warnings cannot. It began with a single paragraph that would destroy Meghan's Hollywood credibility. During pre-production, Ms. Markle displayed repeated difficulty aligning with collaborative direction. Her emphasis remained on external image over internal performance. Crew members reported discomfort and confusion due to mixed signals between her scripted work and off-camera behavior. Recommendation: not suitable for future partnerships within MGM or affiliated productions. It was the corporate equivalent of a dagger, clean, bloodless, final. Within days, it circulated among senior leadership, and by the end of the week, it had somehow reached executives at Amazon Prime Video. Then it spread to other studios through untraceable back channels. Nobody leaked it publicly, but in Hollywood's digital grapevine, it might as well have been carved into stone. Meghan Markle was done. Her team didn't even see it coming. They were still drafting statements about creative redirection and schedule misalignments when the real storm began. Phone calls went unanswered. Meeting invites disappeared. 2 brand partners postponed their campaigns indefinitely. Then came the confirmation, brutal, short, undeniable. A mid-level executive from MGM called Meghan's agent and said, "I'm afraid your client's no longer in consideration for any Amazon-affiliated projects." The word affiliated hit like a hammer. Because Amazon MGM wasn't just one studio. It was a web of production houses, financing partners, distributors. Being banned, there wasn't rejection from a single project. It was being blacklisted from an entire ecosystem. For Meghan, it was personal humiliation disguised as corporate procedure. The moment she heard, she went silent. No tears, no screaming, just a cold, brittle stillness. Then, after a long pause, she whispered, "He did this to me." Her assistant, unsure what to say, nodded quietly. Because deep down, everyone knew she was right. Jason Orley had been the one to write the report. And in an industry where perception is everything, his signature carried more power than any headline. But the real damage came not from Orley's words, but from what the studio uncovered during their internal review. Because Jason Orley wasn't the only one who had complaints. While investigating the fallout, MGM's HR department quietly compiled testimonies from several crew members who'd interacted with Meghan during rehearsals. The accounts painted a consistent picture, not of malice, but of entitlement. She reportedly dismissed junior assistants, refused to wait for lighting adjustments, and once allegedly told a production coordinator, "Can we speed this up? I have more important things to do." Small incidents. Minor, even. But in an industry that thrives on etiquette and hierarchy, they added up. The HR notes were discreetly filed under Workplace Conduct, Observational Summary. And though the file never went public, its contents were whispered among executives like a cautionary tale. That's when the term blacklist officially entered the conversation. It wasn't written in any email or memo. No one dared. But producers started using euphemisms: limited compatibility, brand misalignment, reputational risk. All of them meant the same thing: do not hire. By the second week of the fallout, Meghan's agent had grown desperate. He called in favors, appealed to old contacts, even offered reduced rates for cameo roles. But no one bit. One producer, known for being brutally honest, told him flat out, "We can't have her on set. The crew won't trust her. The energy's wrong." That word again, energy. For Meghan, it was an obsession. She'd built her post-royal persona around it. Manifesting, vibration, emotional harmony. But now, it was the very thing being used against her. She decided to take control. That evening, in a private meeting at her Montecito office, she gathered her crisis team. Her publicist, image consultant, and digital strategist sat across from her, watching as she paced. "They're trying to erase me," she said. "They think I'll stay quiet. They're wrong." Her publicist hesitated. "We could issue a soft statement, something about creative differences, how you're focusing on new opportunities." "No," Meghan snapped. "That sounds like retreat. I'm not retreating." Then, with the conviction of someone used to scripting her own reality, she said, "We go public. We talk about bias, about how women are punished for asserting themselves." Her strategist frowned. Jason Orley's respected. "If we target him directly, it might backfire." Meghan smirked. "Then we won't target him. We'll target the system." And just like that, her next reinvention began: the woman wronged by Hollywood. Within 48 hours, sympathetic media outlets began dropping anonymous insights. Articles described a toxic pattern in the entertainment industry, where women who speak their minds are labeled difficult. The tone was familiar, self-righteous, vaguely feminist, perfectly aligned with Meghan's brand. The public reaction was mixed. Some fans rallied behind her, tweeting hashtags like #LetHerAct and #SupportWomenInFilm. Others rolled their eyes, calling it another pity campaign. But behind the noise, Amazon MGM executives were furious. By going public, Meghan had forced their hand. The studio couldn't issue a statement without fueling the controversy, but they also couldn't ignore it. So, they chose silence, the same silence that had doomed her before. That silence grew louder when, a week later, an internal email leaked to entertainment journalists. The message, allegedly from a senior MGM executive, read, "Our priority remains professionalism and respect for our creative teams. Any public misrepresentation of studio practices will be addressed internally." They didn't name her. They didn't have to. The industry knew exactly who the misrepresentation referred to. It was a surgical strike, cold, corporate, and absolute. The fallout was immediate. Brand deals evaporated overnight. A high-end fashion label that had planned to feature Meghan in its upcoming sustainability campaign quietly replaced her with another actress. A charity gala rescinded its invitation, citing logistical constraints. Even Netflix, her last major creative lifeline, began to reassess ongoing partnerships. Meghan's phone stopped ringing again, and for the first time, she realized that her control over the narrative, her greatest weapon, was slipping away. Because you can spin gossip, you can outtalk tabloids, you can even outshine scandal, but you can't outmaneuver a corporate decision quietly backed by one of the most powerful entertainment networks in the world. Amazon MGM had made their judgment, and they didn't just remove her from close personal friends, they erased her from their future. In Hollywood terms, that meant no auditions, no scripts, no informal pitches. Her name had become a red flag in internal casting databases. But Meghan wasn't ready to accept that this was the end. She told her team, if they want war, we'll give them one. She started reaching out to allies, producers, journalists, influencers, anyone who might help her reclaim sympathy. She crafted her own open letter to Hollywood, which she planned to release as an exclusive to a major outlet, positioning herself as a truth-teller speaking out against systemic hypocrisy. But before she could release it, another leak surfaced, this time from inside MGM's HR department. The memo wasn't supposed to exist outside internal records, yet somehow it reached an entertainment blogger who published a detailed summary. The headline was brutal. Insider report, Meghan Markle accused of creating hostile environment during film rehearsals. The article didn't name sources, but it quoted the memo almost verbatim. It described unreasonable behavior, dismissive conduct, and constant attempts to rewrite the narrative. Overnight, the story spread like wildfire. And suddenly, Meghan's carefully planned PR offensive crumbled. Because this wasn't royal gossip or speculation. This was Hollywood gossip backed by documentation. Every talk show, entertainment podcast, and gossip YouTube channel picked it up. Headlines screamed about Meghan's meltdown. Twitter exploded with debates about whether she'd been exposed or sabotaged. Inside MGM, executives watched quietly. They didn't celebrate. They didn't need to. The system had worked. Meghan Markle was officially untouchable. Her Hollywood resurrection had been buried under the weight of her own ambition, not by scandal, not by sexism, but by her inability to let go of control. In Montecito, her PR strategist arrived at her mansion late that night. The atmosphere was tense. Meghan sat by the window, scrolling through her phone, reading the headlines over and over. "They're saying I was hostile," she said quietly. "Hostile." Her strategist sighed. "Meg, maybe it's time to step back." For a while, she looked up, eyes sharp. "No, I've been silenced before. I know how this game works. We don't retreat. We reframe." But even as she said it, she could feel the ground shifting beneath her feet. Because there's one thing every actor learns eventually. When the industry stops believing in your story, no amount of spin can save you. And for Meghan Markle, that truth had just arrived in black and white, stamped with the MGM logo. The Amazon MGM fallout wasn't just a rejection. It was a declaration. And from here on, she wasn't just fighting for a role. She was fighting for survival. But what she did next wouldn't just shock Hollywood. It would ignite a chain of events that no one, not even Jason Orley, could have predicted. Because Meghan wasn't done. She was just getting started. And her next move would be her most dangerous yet. No one saw it coming. Hollywood has its share of gatekeepers, but few wield as much subtle influence as a director who understands both craft and consequence. Jason Orley was one of those men. Calm, observant, meticulous, the kind of director who could spot a lie in performance as easily as he could spot a misplaced camera angle. And when Meghan Markle stepped onto his set for close personal friends, he didn't just see her. He saw everything she was trying to hide. Orley wasn't cruel, but he was unflinching. He believed in the sanctity of storytelling, in the honesty of emotion, and above all, in the integrity of the performance. He wasn't looking for royalty. He wasn't looking for fame. He was looking for truth. From the first table read, he noticed the problem. Meghan's voice, perfectly modulated, never faltered, but the words lacked texture. The pauses were there, but they felt calculated. The tears she tried to conjure didn't reach her eyes. It wasn't talent he questioned. She had presence, charisma, a screen-worthy magnetism, but authenticity. And authenticity was everything. Back in his office, Orley wrote notes meticulously. He observed her movements during rehearsal, how she gestured when no one was looking, how she reacted to crew suggestions. Every smile measured, every nod considered. He jotted down his thoughts in a private document. She performs herself more than the character, needs control over perception, unable to inhabit vulnerability, risk to production harmony. That document would later become the internal memo that sealed Meghan's blacklist, but in that moment, it was simply an honest assessment. A director's notes. Orley's concern wasn't about her past, the royal drama, the media scrutiny, the social media storm. It was about the present, about what she brought into the room every day. And he noticed a pattern. The more she tried to assert control over the narrative, the more rigid her performance became. Her presence demanded attention, not immersion. Several crew members later confirmed the same impression. She wanted to lead, not collaborate, not act, lead. And in a film built on nuance, that was dangerous.